We now continue reading in Matthew chapter 9 that Don read for us before, skipping ahead just a few verses. So listen now for the word of the Lord. While Jesus was saying these things to them, suddenly a leader of the synagogue came in and knelt before him, saying, "My daughter has just died, but come and lay your hand on her, and she will live." And Jesus got up and followed him with his disciples. Then suddenly a woman who had been suffering from hemorrhages for 12 years came up behind him and touched the fringe of his cloak. For she said to herself, "If only I touch his cloak, I will be made well." Jesus turned, and seeing her, he said, "Take heart, daughter, your faith has made you well." And instantly the woman was made well. When Jesus came to the leader's house and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. And the report of this spread throughout that district. This is the word of the Lord. Thanks be to God. And they laughed at him. They laughed at Jesus. You know, I find that there are few things better than making others laugh when you want to. Like when I say, "I was wondering why the Frisbee kept getting bigger, then it hit me." A little bit. Or, "I was addicted to the hokey pokey, then I turned myself around." That one's better, isn't it? Yeah. That's good. I mean, it feels good, doesn't it, when we say something that we intend to be humorous and people laugh. It feels like people are with you. And it feels like, well, for a moment, maybe I brought a little spark of joy or hope into someone's heart that they could laugh, right? That's good. It is not good when people laugh at you and you don't mean for them to. It's painful. For most of us, it can really bother us. I can remember, in my schooling days, those adolescent years, riding in the back of the school bus to and from school. And my friends from my neighborhood who lived close enough to me to be on the same bus that we had grown up together and we were all friends with each other, began turning on each other, making fun of each other. And you had to sit in the back of the bus with them because if you sat in the front, they'd make even more fun of you. It's not fun being laughed at. It's not. And so the people, they laugh at Jesus when he says this man's daughter isn't dead but only sleeping. And it's not right that they laughed at him. He wasn't wrong. They were. But they laughed at him. And you have to add that instance to the list. There's actually a longer list than you think in the Bible of people laughing at God. You remember what Isaac's name means? Isaac's name actually means laughter, or one who laughs, or who will laugh. Do you remember why Isaac is named the one who laughs or will laugh? Because when God told Abraham and Sarah they were going to have a child in their old age, they laughed at God. God came back to Sarah, by the way, if you remember this little scene, and I think God teased her a little bit and said, "Did you laugh at me? Wait until you see. You'll be laughing, Sarah. You'll be laughing in joy. And she did. She did. From the laughter of scorn to the laughter of joy. Yeah. And so when Jesus came to the leader's house, as Matthew tells us, and saw the flute players and the crowd making a commotion, he said, "Go away, for the girl is not dead, but sleeping." And they laughed at him. But when the crowd had been put outside, he went in and took her by the hand, and the girl got up. Yeah. And the report spread throughout the district. The laughter of scorn must have turned into laughter of joy. It must have. And these people that laughed at Jesus initially, right? They had reason to doubt him. They were professional mourners. Think about that for a minute. They actually made a living mourning, right? For lots of reasons. In that time, it was customary. It would have been embarrassing if you didn't have people mourning a loss in your family, but they also kind of helped facilitate the family mourning, and there's various reasons for that. But the point is, they knew if somebody was dead. Like, they made a living being in the room with dead folks and mourning for them. Also had to do with the purification and being in presence with death. And we might laugh at the idea of there being professional mourners if it didn't just sound like such a somber, morose topic overall. But they laughed at Jesus, right? They laughed at him. And like we said, it wouldn't be the only time. Remember when Jesus was on the cross later on, and he was being scorned and mocked and laughed at? Yeah, that didn't seem to faze Jesus like it does us, being laughed at. Remember, Jesus is fully God and fully human, and so it had to sting a little when people laughed at him, and especially on the cross too, right? I mean, adding insult to injury, literally. But here's the thing. Like in our Matthew passage, like when Abraham and Sarah laugh at God at the thought that God would give them a child in their age, Jesus can handle our laughter. God can handle it. There's a long scriptural tradition of people doubting or struggling to believe God. Or even better, people expressing their doubt, their anger, their fear in a variety of ways, and then somehow still expressing a faith in God's sovereignty. That's actually the formula for many of the Psalms that we have. Where are you, God? Why aren't you acting? What are you doing? And yet I will trust that you will take my life and take this somewhere good. Right? That's the formula, but it starts in that place of doubt, of struggle, of sometimes even anger. Like, where are you, God? Right? And so if we're in those places, hang in there. May your laughter of scorn turn into laughter of joy. See, Jesus, being one with the Creator, can handle our doubt, handle our fear, handle our confusion, handle our anger, and he even faces that derision on the cross and bears it all on our behalf. As long as we'll continue to turn to him, even in our doubt, Jesus can handle the mockery and still love and forgive us. It couldn't have been easy, and it certainly wasn't painless. We know that. But he did that because he loves us that much. And what's more, Jesus can handle all of our needs. Not just one, or one at a time. Look at Matthew 9, just what we read today. How many situations of need is Jesus present to in those two short readings that Don and I shared with you today? First, we have Matthew, the tax collector, who is scorned by his society, but Jesus welcomes him to be a disciple. Right? Matthew had a need to be accepted, to be included, and Jesus did that. And then we have some friendly fire from John the Baptist's disciples. Hey, Jesus, John the Baptist's disciples fast a lot. Why don't yours? Yeah. And so they have a need to understand who Jesus is and how his mission and purpose is different from John's. And he responds to that. He responds to that by telling them, well, the bridal party doesn't fast when the bridegroom is there. In other words, celebrate while the Lord is with you. Yeah. And then we skip a few verses to the passages that I read, and we have this man whose daughter has just died, and he's got to be thinking, well, if I get Jesus here soon enough, maybe he can bring her back to life. And meanwhile, here's a woman who's been hemorrhaging, which means, that she was ostracized, right? That in the Jewish law, she was unclean and couldn't participate in life. So not only did she have health problems that affected her life greatly, she also was ostracized, left out of society. Her need is great. And all she does is touch the hem of his robe, and she's got to be thinking, he's going to be mad at me, but at least I'll be healed. She was healed, and he wasn't mad. And in case we were worried that little delay would mean that Jesus would get to the daughter too late to bring her back to life, he takes her by the hand, and she breathes again. Yeah, he handles a lot in a few short verses in Matthew chapter 9. Simultaneously, one hand tied behind his back. He can take care of it. And we see time and time again in those verses the beauty of a life restored. And I wonder if I, as a father in grief, would know that the living Lord could do that. I wonder if I was a woman whose health issues meant that I was left out, would know that Jesus could do that. And this is where I begin to think about us as the church. Because it seems to me that as followers of Jesus, it is our job to know that. It's our role in the world to cultivate, if you will, an imagination for what restored lives look like. What is possible with a living Lord that can do all of these things, who can even turn the laughter of scorn and mockery into the laughter of joy? What else can he not do? What else can we ask Jesus to redeem and restore in our lives and in the lives of the people around us? What can things be? And how can we, the church, do a better job of seeing that? Because at some point in time, I think not necessarily this church, but I think the church everywhere has started to lose its imagination. What is possible for a God for whom nothing is impossible? When did we lose sight of that? I mean, considered that way, it's no wonder that Jesus' disciples didn't fast. Why would you fast in the midst of a party? Who would do that? I know things can seem pretty bleak, and I know that things can be pretty bleak. We've all been there. But that's just when Jesus seems to be at his best. Having hope for us when we struggle to have hope for ourselves. But then that becomes our job to have hope on behalf of others when they can't hardly hold on to faith. And if they laugh at us for it, so what? So what? The laughter of scorn will turn into laughter of joy. We'll all see that. You know, I knew a grandmother who prayed for years for the reconciliation of her son and granddaughter. So 3 generations we're talking about here, a grandmother, a son, and a granddaughter. And the son and the granddaughter had been estranged for many years. And by the time I knew these folks, it had been so long that it was assumed that would never change. Well, this grandmother prayed every day that they would be reconciled. And she made it known to everyone in the family that her hope was that that would happen. And I remember nobody really thought it would happen. Son didn't seem to, and the granddaughter didn't seem to, and I was new to the family. I didn't even know what they were fighting about. I didn't think it, would happen. And she prayed every day. She held out faith for them when they didn't. But it happened. Or I wouldn't be telling you the story, right? I believe it happened with a phone call, some conversation. Next thing you knew, this family was spending some holidays together. And not only was their relationship restored, but this son and granddaughter became especially close over the years. Yeah, we can hold on to faith on behalf of others when they can't. That's one of the things the church does. So, we can have imagination for better things when others can't. We can believe that all things will be redeemed and restored. I mean, we've got the bridegroom, our risen Lord Jesus Christ. And no, life is not always a party. We know that. But there will be laughter, and it will be the good kind. Amen.